I have this concept called always be interviewing, and I teach it to women at all levels. And I say this with so much love and freedom that you should always be interviewing. But what I essentially mean by that is that you should always be thinking about your career.
Welcome to Women Changing Leadership. I am your host, Stacy Mayer, and I teach you how to get promoted, get paid, and bring your whole self to the leadership table. I am on a mission to change organizations from the C-suite out because women are the new face of leadership, and we are doing it on our terms.
Hello, corporate badasses. Welcome to another episode of Women Changing Leadership. I am your host, Stacy Mayer, and super excited, as always, to be here with you again this week. In today's episode, I'm going to talk to you about the different pathways to the C-suite and what can happen for you once you actually get there. And I think that often the arrival at the C-suite is very surprising for my clients. So I want to give you some very specific examples of women who have arrived at the C-suite and one, been unpleasantly surprised once they got there that it wasn't everything that they hoped and dreamed of on their journey. Because arriving in the C-suite isn't necessarily something that just happens to you. You have to work hard to get there. There has been a lot of intention, a lot of forward progress, a lot of sacrifices along the way. And most women have done various different things in like sort of a zigzag pattern to get themselves in the C-suite, only to find that, well, I won't say that it's not everything it's cracked up to be. I will say only to find themselves out of a job 6 months later, even worse. And obviously, that is not what I want for you, but I also want to tell you why that happens and what are some of the ways and kind of like going into it, what you can think about to make sure that even if that does happen, that you're still, quote unquote, set up for success. All right, so let me first start out today with talking about the goal of the C-suite. Now, I will say, for the majority of my clients, 90% of them, I don't even think that their goal is to get to the C-suite. So I'm an executive coach that coaches women to break through that glass ceiling to actually get their seat at the table and then to keep their seat at the table. So why would women work with me if they didn't actually want to get to the C-suite? And most of the time it's because the examples that they see in front of them are pretty harsh, or they feel like they don't belong there, right? Like it's so different than what they're currently doing, or it seems like just so much more work than what they're currently doing. They can't even imagine themselves in the C-suite. Now, let's go to the woman who does want to be in the C-suite and who is working with me so that she can get specifically her seat at the table. Typically, the goal there is not necessarily the title. The goal could be the income and the shares. And also, let me remind you, if you ever get laid off, there's considerably different severance packages at the top because the risk is so much greater. So you can negotiate something ahead of time, like a separation agreement, if perhaps things don't work out. So it can be incredibly lucrative. So a lot of women are looking at this as like an early retirement plan. So if I can save up, if I can maximize my income, which is true, and this is something that's definitely available to them, or they're looking for a way to get freedom. And so by freedom, that's in a couple of different areas. So this might be you. You want to have that voice. You want your voice to matter. You actually want to be presenting to the boardroom, talking to and reporting to the CEO on a regular basis so that your ideas really matter. You want to be leading a large team. You want to have resources. You want people to listen to you, right? So you've been climbing. You've always been in a position where you had somebody above you telling you no. And you want to be in a position to flip that, to actually be on the other side, to be the person that people are kind of trying to, I don't know, for lack of a better word, kiss up to, right? To be able to think, hey, how can I get on her good side so that I can get my resources pushed through? Like, that's a fun place to be. And I think that's, if women are raising their hand for the C-suite, one, it's wealth, and the other one, it's because they think that they'll have this more influence and power. And the truth is, both of those are true. Both of those are available to the women that I coach. Both of those happen all the time. It's really kind of cool to have that script flipped, right? So that it's almost like they don't realize it and they're operating still in this employee mindset, but they realize they're the main decision maker. It's really just up to them who they want to hire, how they want to restructure their org chart, like whatever it is that they want available to them, they can actually do that. This is all really great, and I wanted to kind of paint this picture. And if you're somebody who's like, I'm not really sure that I want that, I encourage you to keep listening to today's episode. So I'm going to give you a few examples of what happens for women at the C-suite and how they're actually able to sustain it so that they don't completely burn out and then just quit and go into early retirement, which could also happen. And that's totally fine as well. Maybe that's the goal. All right. So there is the one scenario, and this happens for a lot of people, which is that they get hired into the C-suite. Okay. So if you're somebody who has either recently been hired into the C-suite or you are looking to interview at the C-suite level, then this is absolutely, absolutely available to you to have success at the C-suite, whatever type of role that you're applying for. And maybe you've never actually sat in the C-suite, but you've worked at a VP or a high SVP level, and maybe you've even reported into the CEO before, and it's something that would be a very obvious next move. Now, without being too pessimistic, chances are if you've never actually been in the C-suite, you're going to have to take some sort of bridge role. Now, that bridge role might be a C-suite title. So it's not a lower level role. You can absolutely have a separation package. You can have high stocks in the company. You can be making a ton of money at the organization. You can be considered part of the management team. And you can also have some really high, unrealistic, sometimes, expectations put on yourself. So the reason that sometimes we have so much wealth attached to the C-suite is because the risk is so high, very similar to entrepreneurship. You know, when you think about some of the rates that entrepreneurs and consultants charge, it's because the risk is really high, right? Like that client could just leave. Same thing happens at the C-suite. So your risk is really high. You could work really hard to get that job, and you might find yourself in there less than a year. Because what they're looking for you to do is deliver on something. So whatever that promise might be, you're expected to deliver on that or you're out. Now, I'm going to take a little bit of a tangent here for a second, because if you're in that VP level role and you have that kind of pressure and you're expected to deliver on something or you're quote unquote out in the next year, I want you to rethink a little bit, because that means that you're in a position of real influence and authority. Sometimes I even have VPs that are reporting into the CEO directly, and you have this responsibility on your shoulders, yet you don't have that wealth and protection in terms of your severance, potential severance or separation package. A lot of times women get really stuck because the expectations are there. And if they don't deliver, they don't have resources. They're not able to hire. People don't listen to them. They're not included in the board meetings. I mean, if this is you, this is a real problem. So let's talk, okay? If we haven't talked already, I encourage you to go to my calendar, stacymayer.com/discovery, and we can talk about different ways that I can help support you to break this horrible cycle that you might have set up for yourself. But let's say you are at the C-suite. I think the first thing for you to realize, if you are in this high stakes, high pressure situation where you might get laid off in the first year, I would like you to go into the job. So first of all, congratulations, you got hired at the C-suite, which is no small task. But I would like you to go into the job with the knowledge that you might be fired in the first year. And the reason why I tell you this is because it would be so beneficial for you to know that, not because you're going to stress yourself out and like overwork and like, oh God, please accept me, but because one, you're going to remember that you belong there. Okay. You have earned your seat at the table. You have gotten there for a reason. They hired you into this role because they think you're capable of accomplishing whatever task, whatever insane task they have set out for you. And even though you've never been in the C-suite before, they trust that you can do it. Now, the other part of the job description at the C-suite is politics. And a lot of women, while they're focused on their job, they're not focused on the political game. Because even at the C-suite, the mentality is work hard and get rewarded. So if I deliver on whatever they told me to deliver on this first year, then I'll still have a job after the first year. But that's not always the case. You can come in, you can make huge changes, you can deliver exactly what they expected. But if you're not playing the political game and you don't understand the political landscape between the board and the CEO, et cetera, you might find yourself at the end of that year continuously looking for another job. So I have this concept called always be interviewing, and I teach it to women at all levels. And I say this with so much love and freedom that you should always be interviewing. But what I essentially mean by that is that you should always be thinking about your career. Now, as soon as you start to think about your career, if you're in the C-suite or you're looking to get to the C-suite, then you're going to zoom out. You're going to figure out what political games you should be playing and how to maneuver and how to be a part of the executive team. Because God knows that we don't look, think, and act like the rest of the executive suite. So when we get there, it's not an automatic guarantee that we're a part of the club. And so your ability to be a part of the club is a huge part of your success in the executive suite. So if you think about your role in the C-suite as going to be gone in a year, you're going to lift your head up and look around and say, oh, okay, who should I be connecting with? Who do I need to be influencing? Not just the people in the C-suite I get along with. That happens a lot. I really like the CFO. I get along well with the CFO. Who else should you be getting along with? Well, the CTO is really difficult. Figure out a way to get along with the CTO because that CTO might be a founding member of the organization and could be the reason that you're out of a job in a year. Now, the other thing is if you look at your new C-suite role as a bridge role, then you're going to realize that it's only one of 3 C-suite roles that you might have before you eventually retire. And that's a good thing. Because you got there. It's a whole nother skill set to learn at the C-suite. And if you give yourself that freedom, then you're going to feel less like a failure. So one of the things that I see happen for women is when they get to the C-suite and things aren't working out exactly as planned, they think that the C-suite is the problem. Right? Like, I didn't belong there. Or I don't want to deal with that again. Or how awful would that be? And it was just so stressful and I can't do it again. So I'm going to go back down to a VP level role because it's just easier. The truth is it's actually not easier at all because as soon as you go back down to a VP level role, especially if you've already been in the C-suite, you're going to start to instantly see how incapable your actual C-suite is. Like your boss is no longer the CEO, it's another C-suite executive, and you're literally just as capable as they are, but yet now you have no actual influence and power. So I want you to continue to remain in the C-suite for the next 2 or 3 roles, but give yourself some grace. This was your first time in the C-suite. A lot of times we'll see male executives get hired in multiple C-suite level roles, and people will say, oh, they've been in the C-suite before. Like, listen to yourself. They've been in the C-suite before. So they're going to have more confidence, politically speaking. They're going to have more success because they know what changes to make early and fast, right? They know what it's going to take to be successful in that C-suite role. Now, I'm not talking about the subject matter expertise. Like, how to build an organization. What you don't know how to do is quote unquote win friends and influence people. So that's the political game that you're learning in your first C-suite level role when you're finally invited to the table. Now, I'm going to talk to you about some ways that you can break this pattern ahead of time. Okay. And so if you're like, I don't even want to be in the C suite if I'm only going to be there for a year, this is way too stressful and way too hard. There is one thing that you can do really, really easily. It's not so easy to do, but it's something to think about if it's available to you, is if you have a CEO to partner with. So I have had a client that moved into another function in the C-suite, right? So she was looking to interview as in operations, not necessarily in the function that she was like successful in as a VP. But she had a partnership directly with the CEO of that organization. And so we've all known that CEOs that bring in their own C-suite, that have their own C-suite executives, and typically speaking, those C-suite executives are more successful once they get there. And so if you already have relationships with existing C-suite, you're going to be able to skip this step because you don't necessarily have to play politics. You don't have to build trust as much as somebody else might have to, because you're really already included. You're a part of the conversation. That CEO trusts you. The other thing about having that CEO who trusts you and that you've already built that relationship with is that you can go to them very honestly and truthfully. Maybe you're one of those executives that can tell the CEO that they're kind of effing up right now and they need to straighten up. And that happens a lot. And you can be that trusted advisor to that CEO, and they really trust your opinion. Even if it's just like an intuitive hit, you've never ran a company before, you don't necessarily know they're screwing up. But a lot of times women will get into the C-suite and they'll treat it like a regular employee-boss relationship. So their CEO is up here and they're very knowledgeable and important. And I'm way down here and I have to kind of defer to the CEO. But when you have that peer-to-peer relationship with the CEO, you can, one, accomplish so much more, but your credibility skyrockets. So your chance of actually staying in that C-suite level role is greater. So I just want you to ask yourself, what CEOs do I know? What CEOs can I know? Who do I start to build relationships with now so that I can eventually be successful at the C-suite? And there are CEOs available to you today. There are famous CEOs that you've never met before and that you can just begin to get advice from, begin to connect with. Maybe somebody knows somebody who knows somebody and they can introduce you to them. You also have CEOs that might actually be like right next door to you. I have clients all the time that know board members that have CEOs in their network. So really thinking about, if I was going to ride the wave of a CEO, who would that be? Make it up at first. And then if you actually know who that would be, then start riding that wave. Like, even if they're not looking for your position at their particular C-suite, build that relationship with them today. And again, if you're not sure how to build that relationship, then let's work together and I will teach you one-on-one how to build that relationship with your CEO, even if you're not directly working with your CEO. So go to stacymayer.com/discovery, schedule a call with me so that we can figure out a game plan for you to begin to build those relationships. So you can already see how this would be more successful. In that same vein, another way that you can have more chances of success at the C-suite is for you to get promoted internally. Now, this is a harder climb. So you'd already have to be at like a VP or an SVP level. And then you have to all of a sudden build trust with that C-suite, with that CEO. You also have your current existing C-suite that you should be building relationships with, your board, and you don't actually have the title to match it right now. But ultimately, if you can figure out that game plan, that is the ultimate pathway to success. So going back to the beginning of this episode, when you had that original thought of like being in the C-suite, to have that freedom, to feel like your work mattered, to really have that influence at the executive level, to be able to say what's on your mind, to be authentically powerful at work every single day, then the best and easy, and to have one job until retirement, right? I'm going to sit in the C-suite for the next 5 years or 10 years or whatever that might be, and I'm actually going to retire from this role. Even if your choice is to retire early because you made so much wealth and income and you were able to maximize your income so that you were able to retire early, the easiest way to do that is internally because you're already building those relationships, but you have to start at that VP level. You need to make sure that you're having regular 15-minute ally meetings with the entire C-suite, that you have board members in your back pocket. And there are ways to do this that aren't burning bridges, right? That aren't going around your boss. But when you have that C-suite already on your side, then your chances of getting promoted into that C-suite are just like what I call like a magical doorway away. And those doors open at really random times. Like, so you all know that your C-suite executive, your boss, is going to leave at some point. But when that is like totally random. So I have some clients that know that their boss is about to leave. And so they're on their succession plan and everything is set up beautifully. And then their boss finally announces their retirement or that they're leaving to go to another company. And you get screwed because what they do is they say, oh, now you have to interview for that role. And we're not sure. And that's because one reason only. They only had a succession plan with their boss. They weren't building relationships across the C-suite with the CEO and with the board all at the same time, right? So they were just focusing on their boss being true to their word. And what happens is they leave or a position opens up. And then, of course, the board is going to come back and say, let's hire externally. Like we need to fill this with a new voice, with a new mission, with the new ideas. And a lot of times as my clients, you have new ideas, new mission, new voice, but you just haven't told anybody about it, right? And so then you try and cram it all into the interview process and then you don't actually get offered the job. That sucks. So when you're thinking about this longer term C-suite success, it is building relationships across the board. The good news is that people leave at your internal organization all the time. So let's say one of those C-suite executives that you've really spent a lot of energy and time on, who is truly a sponsor and an advocate for you, leaves the organization, you might be that person that gets pulled along with them. And now you go back to scenario number 2, which is that you already have an in. You already have somebody that you've built trust with and you're starting out in the C-suite strong. So these are various different ways that the C-suite roles become available, and also what you do once you get there. If you resonate with any part of this and you're sort of nodding your head and you're like, yep, that's happening to me right now. Yep. Yeah, I left. I finally got a C-suite level role and then I quit because I hated it so much. Then I want to encourage you to try again, because if you're thinking of this as a bridge role or you're thinking of this as like something that you're not going to be in very long, then the good news is that imposter syndrome goes away because it's temporary, because everything is just a step to something greater. Even if that step ends up becoming starting your own business and creating a consulting business or writing books or starting a podcast or becoming an industry thought leader, like whatever those steps might be, getting yourself into that executive level position is part of that journey, is part of that process. And when you think of it as not being forever, your forever role, then perhaps maybe you might be more likely to raise your hand, because Lord knows we need you at the executive suite, even if it's only for 6 months, even if it's just a bridge role into what's next, because everything that happens for you at that executive level is going to help grow you like leaps and bounds. Not that subtle kind of growth, but like real change. And if you're into that and you're like, hey, I want to make waves, I want to make a difference in this world, then again, I invite you to get on the phone with me. Let me help you and support you to make those waves, to get yourself to that executive suite and to claim your seat and your rightful voice at the table. Go to stacymayer.com/discovery and we'll hop on the phone and we'll map out your executive level success plan today. Thank you all so much for listening, and I'll see you next week. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to Women Changing Leadership with Stacy Mayer. If you enjoyed this episode, you are absolutely going to love and benefit from the work that we're doing inside of the Women's Leadership Accelerator. This month-to-month membership program is unlike anything else in the market. We are single-handedly flipping the unemployment rates on their head. It is the only place on the internet where you can actually get yourself not only a job offer, but one that has a higher salary, a higher title, and more recognition and influence than you ever could have imagined in your career. Inside the Women's Leadership Accelerator, we are getting women promoted. We are getting them multiple higher level job offers. And I want that to happen for you. Join us in this one-of-a-kind program. You're going to get coaching directly from me, my executive mentors who are also hiring managers who are doing the work, who have worked with me personally for the past 3 to 5 years. We are here inside of this accelerator program to work with you personally to begin to elevate your leadership to that next level. This is exactly what you have been looking for, and I am here to deliver it to you. Best thing. It's month to month. So you can come in, join us, get access to all of my training materials, my weekly live interactive calls, and you can begin to bring your friends into this community. It is the most corporate badass community on the market. I can't wait to see you in there. Go to authenticallypowerfulwomen.com. We are changing the face of the leadership table one promotion at a time. I can't wait to see you there.